Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while.
Hi, everybody. Welcome again to the Behavioral Corner. It's me. I'm hanging here all the time, Steve Martirano. And I hope you are as well. What happens here on the Behavioral Corner is that we're fortunate in running into all kinds of people that we get to talk about the issues that intrigue us here. And that, quite simply, is everything, because it is everything that ultimately affects our behavioral health. It's a big topic. It's all, of course, underwritten by our great partners, Retreat Behavioral Health, about which more you'll hear later. So sit back here, hang with us on the corner. We got a good one that I think affects a lot of people, and it's we're going back to work. We're going to take a look at the world of work, which makes up so much a part of our lives, and how it has now been impacted, as everything else has, by the pandemic. So what do you want to do when you want to find out about work? You go find a worker. You find somebody who understands a little bit about what's going on in that regard. And we were turned on to a fellow who's going to make a great guest and make a great contributor to this topic. Ken Boggis is vice president of digital sales for a company called Haibu. He has almost 25 years experience. He's been a salesman. He's trained salesmen. He's led sales teams, and he's come through this pandemic with the rest of us. So we're going to find out what the new Willie Lomans look like here on the Behavioral Corner this time. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Take a minute and tell people what Haibu is.
Haibu is a digital marketing agency. We work with small, medium-sized business owners across the country, large business, and we essentially help them compete online for the products and services that they're looking to work with, their local communities. Been in business for a long time, and have built great, strong relationships, across the country.
Well, I'm so grateful to have somebody with your expertise here, because I've been fascinated by salesmen, and in broadcasting, certainly, salespeople are no stranger to us, even those of us who were never on that side of the building. I've been of two minds, and I've seen good salespeople and I've seen bad salespeople, but I've always been of the mind that, and we're going to get to the meat of this, but I wanted to throw this out. I've been of two minds about salespeople. And give me your impression on this. Are salespeople born, or are they made?
I think probably a little bit of both. It's a rare breed. Those that get into sales and those that have the ability to establish a long career. That longevity doesn't happen for everybody. I think you have to put yourself in an environment where you're constantly learning, right? Salespeople have there's a unique skill set that you need to bring to the table. It's that mindset and that ability to handle rejection. That's something that the human mind is not accustomed to. That's not something that people run towards, right? That they embrace, right? The human brain and heart does the exact opposite, right? When you that fear of rejection, there's always that drive to be wanted, to be needed. And for salespeople, for most, that's not the case. So it's your ability to have an appetite for that, to understand, what that means in the long run, and really the ability to put yourself in the position of your clients, right? There's kind of an old saying: if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And if you keep that in your core, and you're truly genuine in your approach, that you have a product, a service, a consultative approach that can help people, reach their dreams and their goals, then you'll be very successful. And it's also, again, building up that threshold to be able to do it day in and day out, and remove that monotony from it that I think comes along for a lot of folks.
I alluded to the archetype of Willie Loman from Miller's play, A Death of a Salesman, as a sort of archetype of that, the guy with the suitcase who goes door to door and town to town. That's a very unsophisticated way of looking at salespeople. I also believe, and I want to hear your opinions on this, we're all salesmen. Everybody is a salesman. When your 8-year-old is, trying to get something that they think they absolutely have to, they're selling. They're selling. We're all selling. So I guess in a sense, this topic about sales and work affect us all one way or another. Let's talk specifically about the nuts and bolts. Let's get into the weeds of what happened to people who sell during the pandemic. What was the impact on business clients? What was the impact on salespeople?
Well, I think the experiences varied greatly, right, across the sales industry. For us, the impact was massive, right? That disruption hit so quickly and so profoundly that it changed our business overnight, right? Like a lot of people, everything stopped. In our business, we are forward facing. We meet with our clients on a regular basis. We are face to face, belly to belly, if you will. And overnight, that was taken away from us and our clients. And that's a tough spot to be, right? When you really don't see it coming. And how do you deal with that? And, everything was new. And I think for a lot of people, it's the fear of the unknown, right? And the fear of the unknown drives anxiety. And, all of a sudden for us in our business, we went from a very interactive environment to, all of a sudden we're kind of on our own, right? And it forced us to slow down and really look inward about our process and really about our future. And we had to figure it out. There was really no time to waste. I think like a lot of businesses, it hit quickly, it hit hard. There was a material impact, and you had to pivot to figure out, how you're gonna survive this, and not only survive, how are you gonna thrive, going forward.
Yeah, books will be written. They already have begun about what this moment in time did, and we still don't know what the long-term changes will be. And I think in your field, there will be some profound changes going forward. But
no doubt, they've already happened. They're happening now.
Absolutely. But that moment, which is obviously unprecedented, when in a consumer culture like ours, we were told to stand down. That's different than somebody giving you marching orders. Okay, there's a crisis, do this, or we're going to do that. That came later. What first came was stop. And I think that was one of the great challenges for people in your business. What were some of the others? I'm thinking fear must have been the first challenge you had to overcome. What were some of the immediate challenges of that moment?
I think, again, it goes back to the immediacy of this disruption, right? We've been through these things before. I think back to the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, something that I was impacted with during my career, but we saw that coming. It was a little bit more drawn out. You had more time to anticipate it. The immediacy of this disruption was scary, right? And to your point, everything just stopped. And that doesn't line up well with our business model for our clients, for our business. And for us, the clients we work with, they were impacted differently, right? Some were severely impacted. They were, considered non-essential businesses that, the lights were turned off the next day. Others, fell somewhere in the middle. And others, believe it or not, had the high-class problem of being more on demand because of this type of product or service that now was really needed based on that environmental change. So we really had to adapt to all of those needs and be able to show kind of vision and empathy for our clients and ourselves. And we didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. You had to figure it out, and you had to pivot quickly. And I believe there was two things that impacted the business world. One was, how are you going to pivot and change personally, right? Because your habits had to change. You were forced to change. And then also, how would you apply those from a business perspective, right? Because they're two different things, but they're uniquely connected. And that, again, that time of looking inward, you mentioned, our friend, the salesman, Willie, before, and that was his downfall, was it not? That he never looked inward. He never took responsibility, for his actions. And I think that's a hard thing to do, especially when we're moving really fast. Prior to the disruption, for most business life, you're hard charging, you're moving fast. You don't have a lot of time sometimes to think about what you're doing, the actions that are taking place. But when you are forced to slow down, you look inward. I know personally, my my day-to-day changed dramatically. I went from an environment where I traveled a lot. I was interacting with clients. I was interacting with coworkers on a daily basis. And there was just a lot of energy that came along with that, positive and negative, but it's what I fed off of. And then that changed overnight. And all of a sudden I was in my cave. I was in my home office.
I want to get into some of that impact too, straight ahead, but it's the personal that I want to take a moment. Adaptation, or die, of course. Nobody knows that better than salespeople. Can't sit around and, take forever trying to figure it out. You have to adapt. Pardon me. There's an emotional toll on that. You mentioned Willie Loman again. Willie's, as you point out correctly, he lived in a fantasy world that obscured the real stuff that was going on, the end of his career, what it all meant. But he had this rich fantasy life. And when it collapsed, so did he. This is a similar situation. You think you know the way the world works. You think you know what your role in it is. Suddenly it changes. Now, we'll get into this. I mean, you mentioned two ways, the personal and then in the business sense. What was your experience and what were your colleagues telling you about the emotional adaptations they had to make? Because it wasn't just business. There were emotions involved. Can you share some of the thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, listen, to be successful in work, right? You have routine. For me, is everything, right? Routine is your friend. You have to embrace that. You have to be pretty measured about your approach to routine. And that was something that came, I think, a lot easier for people before the disruption because your schedule helped kind of dictate what that pace looked like, what your routine looked like. COVID changed that. Worlds collided, right? Worlds collided. The living room became the home office, or the basement became the home office. Parents and children colliding, and it's a lot of disruption. It caused a lot of stress. So for me, I think initially I realized that, I recognized it. I was cognizant of it immediately that this doesn't feel right for me, right? This doesn't feel right. I was almost losing a little bit of my normal daily motivation. What do I do next? My process was off, and I understood that. And, I focused on the things that have always served me well, which are the basics, was my sleep, diet, exercise, how I presented myself every day. We were all guilty of it. We all probably woke up quite a few mornings in 2020 and made a decision not to shower, made a decision to put on sweatpants instead of dress slacks, right? And I'm a big believer that carries over into your performance and your mindset going forward. So I really, made sure to embrace that, to make sure I still had a routine that allowed me to kind of get into that mindset that I know I needed to bring forward to my people, right, within my business and my clients, to make sure I could be the best version of myself.
And in addition to that, in terms of like the people you advise or the people you work with, this routine, this going back to your strengths, to first principles, to best practices, that also has got to help lower the personal anxiety and stress. Because businesses were going under. I mean, people's jobs were, being shedded about this thing, which can lead to all kinds of, unfortunate behaviors to manage that. How do you manage stress? You're in a stressful business. Selling's a tough gig.
Yeah, I think the first piece is understanding that stress and anxiety is normal, right? We all have it. It's always there. It's just a matter of how it manifests and how you react to it. I think you got to let go of control. I think for a lot of people, a lot of salespeople,
let go. You say let go of control.
Let go of control a bit. Don't obsess over the things that you have no control over, which were in abundance in 2020 as the disruption hit. And focus on the variables you can control. And for me, for myself, for my family, for my direct team, we spoke very openly about that. I think it was very important in those moments. I think it's always important to be vulnerable, right? To be vulnerable in that moment, to recognize that this is okay. I get it. This is what I'm feeling. I can't control all these external variables, but let's focus and prioritize the things that we can impact, right? How do we help our clients? How do we help ourselves? And it always boils down to connections, right? It's those emotional connections. I think that's at the root of everything we do. And I think, understanding that, the human brain is only capable of so much. There's only so much capacity in any given day. and you can't, try to boil the ocean every day. You just can't do it. You can't do it. So let's prioritize what matters, what those metrics are that we think are the most important for our own personal health and the health of our business. And if we do that and we do it day in and day out, you know what, we're going to be pretty successful, and we'll get through this. I think that was an important piece of constantly driving that message home, that this is a moment in time. This too will pass. And, and if we apply ourselves the right way, we'll be better versions of ourselves on the other side.
I was going to ask you that next, in terms of coming out the other side of this thing. Do you think that, ironically, this is an opportunity for people to be better at their jobs, to get sharper at what they do, learn how to manage stress better? Is this in other words, this disaster, were there opportunities in it?
There's no doubt. Listen, disruptions and the challenges that come along with it are excellent opportunities for growth if you apply yourself the right way, right? If you recognize them, you address them, and most importantly, you bring them forward, right? You learn from them. So there's no doubt about it. And we spoke about that. From a business perspective, we had to really, put ourselves in the shoes of our clients and understand the stress that they were going through, and understand, where they were at, and how could we improve our sales process. We believe, here we are. We're on a Zoom call now. Zoom has become a everyday part of business for us and everybody else out there. But Zoom fatigue and just this virtual world is a real thing. Yeah. How do we change that for our clients? How could we streamline our process? How could we, not overwhelm the client? Be able to still present value, hear them, understand what they're trying to accomplish. Make a smart, responsible recommendation, and do it in less time. Understanding that they're under a lot of stress, they're under a lot of anxiety. How do we meet them kind of midway? And we spent a lot of time working through, those conversations to make sure, we could also bring the anxiety levels of our clients down, which we knew that they appreciated, and they would reciprocate as well.
Yeah. Too often people think of the sales moment, client, salesperson, as sort of adversarial. I want to convince you of something you may be resistant to. This was a different kind of dynamic. Everyone's sort of in the same boat. It's interesting to hear you say that your people and you talked about, look, they're as anxious as we are. Let's not overlook that. Maybe we can talk them down a little bit. And in doing so, we can manage our stress. We're talking about the pandemic effect because it's the most obvious example, but we're similarly in the world of business and work going through a moment now that is very scary for many of your clients, I'm sure, and all of us. And that's for the first time in, who knows, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, inflation has reared its ugly head, and nobody hates anything more than the price of gasoline going up every 30 seconds, and bread and everything else, which is stressful across the board. How do you guys prepare yourself to do your job while managing that reality?
Yeah, it goes back to one of our core principles. I mean, when we interact with a potential client, we look to bring somebody on. We talk about it in terms of clients for life. And for me, and for my 20 plus years in this business, your consistency, your ability to set proper expectations, your ability to listen to your clients and truly understand what they're trying to accomplish and help them meet that. That's what will serve you very well long term. So what we did find during COVID, during this disruption, these last 2 years, is that we used to rely more on a face-to-face opportunity to connect, and that's a great environment to build trust in. That changed overnight, and we realized that we had to incorporate more touch points, more opportunities to connect with our clients, stay in touch with them, make sure we understand what they're going through. That cadence had to improve from a frequency standpoint, and that so whether it's a COVID disruption, whether it's a new election in the country, whether it's inflation, it doesn't really matter what the disruption is. If you're in constant contact with your client, you understand their needs, you understand what their roadmap looks like and how to help get them there, you can get through to the other side on any of that. So it's real, but again, you don't hide from it. You have very transparent, open conversation with your clients, and we're always talking 3, 6, 9 months down the road. Where do you want to be from there? What are the challenges and how do we get past them?
Our guest is Ken Boggis. He's the vice president of digital sales with the company Haibu. He's talking to us about work in the new world that we're living in now. The stresses associated with the emotional toll this can take. Before I ask you what you would have done differently, because you've explained pretty accurately what you did do, what's been the impact on your family and your colleagues' family through all this disruption? The oldest thing in the world is don't bring work home. Oh, don't bring your work home. It'll ruin your family. Well, guess what? Everybody brought their work home. How did you guys deal with it?
Yeah, listen, it wasn't easy. I think early on for me and for a lot of my colleagues, and we spoke about this openly, it was a challenge. It was a challenge. As I mentioned earlier, those worlds were colliding. I felt that stress. I think I projected that stress onto my family at times. The irony of the situation is, the world changed, but you were always on, right? In this virtual world, working from home, all of a sudden, you had to be very careful of those worlds interfering with each other. And I personally found that I was overreaching from a work standpoint, right? It was really starting to drive into my personal life and impact that life. I was kind of cheating on that side of it. I wasn't giving my family my time. Some of those, I mentioned those routine, things before, my sleep, exercise, diet. I was pulling from there just because work was there. It was a constant pull. And I think it's something you need to really find that balance. You have to learn how to shut it down. And that's not easy. No. Because ironically, the very thing we talk about from a business standpoint, right? We have the attention of consumers today. We all spend way too much time on these devices, but they can draw you in, pretty quickly. So we had to make sure, we talk a lot about, scheduling your values from a personal standpoint, the things that are paramount, the things that are really important to you, whether that be, spending time with your family. Maybe you enjoy cooking with your family. Maybe you're involved with your kids in coaching. That's something I'm very passionate about. Maybe it's your exercise, things that you have to be able to be involved in to have kind of long-term success and mental stability. You have to schedule those into your calendar, and then you have to build everything else around that. Otherwise, they simply won't happen. So it's a balancing act. It's never perfect. It's something that I still look at on a daily basis to try to measure out and see if I'm hitting the mark. I think some days I am, and other days, I probably come up a little bit short. But we're aware of it. We're aware of it.
Yeah, you have young children too, which add to the kind of stresses that go on. And I can certainly understand what you mean about just because you're home and can work from home doesn't mean you should always be at home working. There's your life as well. So this notion of now looking back over the arc of the past couple of years, is there anything you would have done differently during that period to make it less stressful, less of an emotional toil?
Probably would have reacted quickly. I think there's two ways to answer that, right? I think it took a while for us. We all froze for a moment, right? And then we had to kind of pick ourselves up and figure out how we were going to move forward. I probably would have reacted a little bit quicker. Some of these things, you mentioned, how do you deal with the stress? Find time to connect. Finding time to connect. Early on, I focused on my work. I threw myself in head first. And before I knew it, it was a little bit of a lonely existence, right? But before the disruption, I had the ability due to travel and just, windshield time in and out of airports. And I make it a point to contact friends, family members, and have these conversations kind of on the fly. And I didn't realize that was removed. That was gone. So again, that kind of goes back to scheduling your values and, taking care of your village. Identify, first of all, who's your village, your family, your work family, right? That network. I'm actually tighter now, Steve, with people 2 years into this pandemic than I was before, because I've scheduled that time. I make certain specific times during my week I dedicate to making a phone call to somebody I haven't talked to.
I find myself doing that. I'm the least likely guy to go, hey, I wonder what Joe's been up to. And but now you go, well, you better go find out what these people are doing just for the hell of it. The other thing that's happened, and I get a kick out of this, is that the sort of rhetorical phrase, hey, how you doing, never took on a deeper and more honest meaning than during this whole thing. Hey, how you doing? I mean, no, how are you doing, right? So that all changed. It's just been incredible.
There's comfort. There's comfort in talking to people, and, and you open your eyes to realize that everybody's going through the same thing. Might be a little bit different based on their world and what they're experiencing, but at the end of the day, it's the same. We're all being challenged. We're all being pulled in different directions, and you have to find, your simplicity in that. And for me, talking to people that help. I also think a big component of this was, feed your brain. Feed your brain. Things, podcasts like this, reading. Find things that are, that are stimulating for you outside of work. They're subjects that are unrelated to work, unrelated to family. That's something I didn't establish in my daily routine before this disruption. And it's an absolute for me every day now. Yeah. That I think it really helps relieve that stress and anxiety that comes.
Yeah, just just one sort of nuts and bolts thing, because I've been back. My son's almost in the same sort of work you are, and I know lots of salesmen, as I said. And now here we are, you and I connecting over Zoom. Lots of business is being done this way. And I wonder, do you miss the travel, first of all? And do you think going forward, this notion of having to be face-to-face with somebody in a sales context is a thing of the past, or is it always going to be with us?
So do I miss the travel? Yes and no. Yes and no. I think the travel was healthy. It broke up kind of the monotony of the role, right? I think in some ways, many of us are day to day, it looks very similar, and that can be problematic. But I also, listen, I really appreciate the additional time that I have with my family and my friends, and the increased productivity that I have from work. If you manage your calendar the right way, it's a good environment. I think we all have to be careful of this notion that, work from home is evergreen, that's a forever thing. I personally believe in our business, we've started to trend back to somewhere in the middle. We found out about halfway through this that our clients crave contact just as much as we did, right? For them to move forward, for them to have that level of trust to say, hey, we're going to go into business together and move this partnership forward. They want to see you face to face. That's still, I'm a firm believer, that's still how the majority of business gets done. So I think, for different businesses, different industries, there'll be little different variations and nuances. For us, I think it's going to land somewhere in the middle. I think a big part that's been lost in these last 2 years are relationships and the culture that you build in an organization. We've all heard of the Great Resignation, and I think that's going to happen a lot more often in environments where they haven't made those human connections with their coworkers.
That's another fascinating. We could do another whole show on why people are quitting their jobs and where are they going. Work is so critical to who we are and how we feel and behave. That's why we wanted to have you on. You've been terrific about this, Ken Boggis. Ken, I'm going to sum it up with this, which I just came across earlier in the day, and you used it in a note you sent me. You talk about work-life balance. Now, that may be a term people have heard a lot, but I assure you it's new, because growing up, that concept wasn't obvious in my life or my parents' lives. Everybody worked. You just worked. I mean, there wasn't even a lot of talk when I was growing up of retiring. Nobody ever talked about retiring. It was work. And then there was, life. There was, life. So now we have these things that are important to certain people to meld and balance, work-life balance. You said you were an advocate of that as well. There is a book out entitled Work Won't Love You Back by a reporter and a podcaster named Sarah Jaffe. Saw it in the New York Times. The subtitle is How Devotion to Our Jobs Keeps Us Exploited, Exhausted, and Alone. Her point is that many people in generations Z and the millennials have grown up with the idea that work will more than, it should be more than just making a living. It should be a vocation, a calling. This is new. This is a brand new notion. Do you agree with her that it's a con, or do you think it's absolutely important to have a work-life balance?
Listen, Steve, I think it's important to have a work-life balance. I think, the pendulum somewhere along the line has swung right in one direction, maybe too far. You can't have one without the other. I think what's really important for every individual is you have to identify your why. Why do you do this? Why do you get out of bed in the morning, right? What makes you get out of the shower, put your boots on, and go to work, right? And what is that rooted in? Usually it's going to be family. It's going to be, the things that you're emotionally attached to, right? But you can't just jump forward to that. But you do have, I'm a firm believer, you have to put the work in. And I'm a big believer that you can have both, but you have to establish yourself. Whatever that why is, you have to identify what it is. You have to identify what it's going to take to get that, to provide that environment yourself. And you have to go get it. And I've always been a big believer that you don't have to work 70, 80, 90 hours a week. Sometimes that may be what it takes. And you have to be willing to put that time in and to grind if that why is that important to you. But as long as you're handling yourself with integrity, as long as you're thinking long term, as long as you're helping enough people get what they want, I'm a believer you're going to get what you want. So again, it all goes back to balance, scheduling your values. I'm a worker. This is it's allowed me to enjoy a lot of the great things in my life today, but it didn't just happen. You put the time in, and I think the harder you work, the more opportunities are created for you.
Excellent stuff. Ken Boggis, ABC, always be closing. You closed this sale. Ken, thanks a lot. The next time we travel into the world of work and the stresses, we're going to reach out for you. You're a great guest. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. It was great.
All right, the rest of you get back to work, but don't forget about the Behavioral Corner. We're here. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're every place. Follow us there and catch us next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Retreat Behavioral Health has proudly been serving the community for over 10 years. Here at Retreat, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 or visit us at www.retreatbehavioralhealth.com to begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.